You played at LVO. You went 5-1 in the GT with a Sin Cabal list,
Yeah.
playing what has to be 8 of the top 10 most unloved models in Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you explain to me the impetus of the list and why you were playing this thing?
Yeah. So it's probably about two big reasons. The first one is Cabal's the first affiliation I started playing when I played this game. It started primarily with Malekith, and then I bought Sin, and then just never played her really. And I kind of we had a bunch of local we don't want to bring competitive events, and I started bringing Sin, and I did really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is kind of interesting. I bet nobody knows how to play into it. Let's try this at LVO. And that's kind of where the list started, was at one of those, I tried to make a bad list for a different event. It did really well, and then I would just started riffing off of it a little bit here and there.
All right, sounds cool. So in the video, like the list will be up on screen,
Hmm.
but to roll through it, you have Sin as your only leader. The only leadership in the thing is Sin.
Yeah,
You
only one
have
needed.
you have Viper, the Wrecking Crew, Crossbones 1, Ulik, Malekith, Ultron 1, Modok 1, Quicksilver, Toad.
I do not have Malekith.
What?
You said Malekith
Oh,
there? That
sorry, I
would be
meant Modok.
Taskmaster.
Sorry, Modok 1, not Malekith.
Yes.
Modok 1. All right.
Okay.
Um, outside of like Toad, none of these models are considered best in class.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess uh, let's just get into the obvious thing. So like, okay, uh, how do I want to go about this? Where do I want to start? So let's start off with the model that I think everyone in this seems to be the most concerned about. And it's actually not Sin, but it's Viper. Like, why is Viper here? So I tried to, or Alex Bots tried to ask you why Viper was in your list, especially since you have like Zemo in faction.
Hmm.
And your response was only a cryptic, it's my Thor 2 counter. And then you like just
Yes.
like disappeared into the woodwork.
Yeah.
So now I'm going
Yeah.
to hold your
Let's.
feet to the fire. Why Viper here?
So Viper does two things really well. The first one is she's actually more mobile than people will give her credit for.
Mm-hmm.
She's far more mobile than even Zemo is. Uh, Long move is really good,
Mm-hmm.
but the place on a range 3 attack is nuts. A lot of times you can combine that with like flipping and then running away with an objective, or picking up something and running away with an objective. That really is I don't know, almost like a shock factor. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if people saw her a lot, it would dwindle that playstyle. But because she's not played as much as like a Zemo, where we're all conditioned to okay, he moves long and then he's range 2, and I know what that range looks like. What does range 3 look like out of that? What does a place out of 1 look like out of that? That's been very useful. The other thing is she has better conditions. Stun's super relevant, especially into Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Poison's super relevant, especially into Thor. Her attack values aren't great, which makes stun and poison even better, especially into Thor, because you're not pushing through damage. It's the old Web Warriors thing.
Yeah.
If my attack pool isn't that good, then I don't give you power. So that's one of the reasons she's good there. Um, I'll, you know, a little tongue in cheek on the Thor 2 counter. She, in my fifth game against actually one of my locals
Mm-hmm.
who went down there, it was in the main event the second day, Dan Geisman. He played like a Wakanda list into me
Okay.
that had Thor 2, and in one activation, she 100 to 0 Thor, giving out the stun with almost no damage the first attack, and then
Just like,
spiking him so he had no power.
uh,
Yeah,
all right.
so that's where the Thor 2 counter comes from, really.
All right. But essentially, she's in here for Zemo because she is faster due to, like, so they're both long move,
Yeah.
and they both have, like, the ability to kind of bounce off people, but she has the displacement ring where
Hmm.
she can, like, teleport. And
Yeah.
my issue with Viper had always been that I thought Viper was kind of just like a bad Quicksilver because I think she came out either, I think she came out after Quicksilver. I could be wrong about that. But Quicksilver is like very similar in kind of his tech. And then you look at the list and, Quicksilver's here. So she's just another Quicksilver.
Yeah, yeah. I also wouldn't use the comparison of Zemo to her very often. I know they're both affiliated threes long movers. I think she plays a lot like Black Cat without a steal.
Yeah.
And if you treat her on the table much more like you would Black Cat without a steal, you'll have a lot more success with her. She is crazy mobile, and I have spoiler for later. I'm running a ton of beta flips. She's just great at those.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay. So I think I've accidentally gotten ahead and just like decided to talk about the stuff I'm excited about. But what is like the high level plan of the list? Like, how does this list win the game? You know, like obviously, like you think about Asgard, it kills all your models until you can't play the game, and then it plays objectives as much as it needs to. Or Web Warriors, they grab the stuff and they run. How is this Sin list playing the game?
Yeah, so it's everybody's favorite or least favorite version of MCP. It's mid range at its core. You have to fight just enough. But it's also a lot of pay to flips. It wants to score secures. So Web Warriors tries to run away with extracts. It tries to outscore you by making you run around the table on secures constantly. The relevancy of her leadership is, even though it's 50-50, a steal is still relevant, especially because dropping an objective is super relevant on scrolls, on hammers, on anything where they want to activate with the thing and not have to worry about it. But also, like sword base is in there. I think this roster does really great on sword base as a spoiler. The push is super relevant. A free, uncontested pay to flip on sword base. Whoever wins sword base is usually who makes more of those, and that's just doubling down on those chances. Yeah, so I think that's probably where it kind of plays. Modok's in the list because I needed some type of hit. But it really wants to like score by the end of 4 and punch you enough along the way to get that job done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I guess Crisis is a good place to talk about this stuff. You have a Sword, Infinity Formula, Spider Portals, Daily Legacy Virus, Paranoia, and Hammers. The important thing here is that Sin's extract drop only works on assets, so you're playing 3 assets.
Yep.
And then you're playing 2 pay to flips and Infinity here. And I don't know how much we haven't really spoken about this list prior to this interview, but in preparation for this, I have like 12 games with this list. I am 10-2 with it. I am a big believer of the hype. I have it's just kind of like shockingly good at what it does. And the leadership triggers, while frustrating and unreliable, can be hugely impactful, specifically on these scenarios.
Yeah, that's kind of where I started with, was like, so the odd one in the room is obviously Infinity. It's not a pay to flip. B shape is something that's very good on. The threat value is very good. But also, denying your opponent the power that they were probably planning on is super relevant. The amount of times you're playing somebody who's good at the game, and they'll go, no, I can spend 2 power here because I'll get 2 power in the power phase, and then I'll have the thing. And denying them that 1 power often screws up a lot of plans.
Yeah, you're talking about the fact that like Sin's leadership triggers in the cleanup phase after scoring, but before crisis effects. I discovered this in my game against Asgard, which I actually managed to win after losing like 15 games in a row of Asgard with Shield. I effortlessly won an Asgard game. And part of that was that Sin's push before gamma damage triggers.
Yes.
So by extension, the same with Infinity Formula.
Yeah. Using that as like I don't want to say gotcha. I feel like that term's thrown out a lot in this game. But using that as like kind of a tactic or a surprise to their strategy, or like something to throw them off of their game plan, is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And doesn't get enough talk about her leadership.
Absolutely. Like, I think one of the things I really like about this list was one of the things I really liked about my Shield list 2 years ago when I did very well at LVO, which is that it like encourages your opponent to make mistakes. And like, they are kind of gotchas, but like, I don't know, anytime you can in competitive gaming, if your opponent's going to make a mistake, just let them. Just
Yeah.
take the easy out to first. If they're going to try to do something fancy and make a mistake, let them. And I
No,
think
I mean you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say the reason why like doubling down on that fact is pay to flips. The amount of people who don't play pay to flips, the amount of people who've never played pay to flips, who had to ask what spider portals did at LVO GT is staggering. Especially my local meta is like 2 Spider Foes players, 3 X-Men players, a Hellfire guy. Like I've been playing pay to flips for 3 years. This is not new to me. The fact that somebody had to go, what do you mean I get placed on a skull?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the crisis. Like stuff like that, and letting people like I don't know, get overconfident about stuff and then getting those pushes really plays into this list game plan, and they have a lot of ways to take advantage of you being out of position.
Okay, so that's interesting. So like one of the things I like came into this list when I first put a couple games under it was that Infinity Formula seemed kind of out of it, but like uh Infinity Formula, because like people be like, oh, I'll get 2 power, and then you hit the 50-50 and then they're short to be able to use Zemos charge or whatever ability they were going to use to like get back in it. I think that makes a lot of sense to me, and especially because you're planning on contesting anything you can kind of always.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are, even though you are mid-range, I think you're like aggressively attacking the game from all sides, right? It's not like
Yeah.
mid-range the way
you don't
that
get
like,
to sit back. You don't
exactly.
get to sit back. You don't get to run away with the extracts. You kind of have to move to their back points
Mm-hmm.
often and hope that you're getting meaningful like triggers on some of the builders, triggers on her leadership. There's a lot of 50-50s in this roster, and you're just hoping that enough of them turn your way, and then there's not much your opponent can do about that.
Yeah.
That's kind of its play pattern.
And then the reason you're kind of off Madman, I assume, is kind of the opposite reason, where like they get pushed out of range and then the Madman doesn't trigger on them.
That's one of them. The other one is, and this will be a thing I'll say a lot. I expected a lot more Midnight Suns at LVO this year. There was still a lot of it, but I expected that to pretty much flood the meta. It seemed like people were already tired of playing Asgard, and that kind of was the good answer into it, theoretically. Midnight Suns is crazy good at Madmen, and I just didn't think in testing I could keep up with them. So if I expected to play them a lot, it didn't make sense to bring something that I thought they were stronger on than I was.
That makes sense to me, especially like, and Asgard's also pretty good at Madman specifically.
Yeah, yeah, very, very much so.
And yeah, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Are there any? Okay, so then on the other side, we're playing all assets like we talked about. And you picked Hammers and Paranoia, which I think makes a lot of sense. Like Hammers, you have Sin's a rapid fire character. And Paranoia and Hammers are like the 2 most live assets, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because most of the assets tend to be 3 wide.
Yeah.
And not 4. And
the only other example would be Cubes.
Cubes is 5.
But
Yeah.
I really hate Cubes for this roster. They do not have good health pools.
Yeah.
So,
That makes a lot of sense to me, because like all of your characters kind of like sit just out of being reliably one attacked by anything in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And once they take 1 or 2 points of damage, they're like really inside that like any given attack can kill them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that was at least my. I tried Cubes. It's full disclosure. Tried Cubes.
Yeah.
That was my read on it. The 2 or so games I played of it was that every single time we'd get to round 2 and all of my models would get spiked in quotes off the table because that 1 extra damage was the difference most of the time. Yeah.
And then do you think any like aspect of like the success of this list is that assets are like very popular in the current meta?
Yeah, that was huge. If I win, usually you want to win prio with this list. A lot of lists. That's not unique. But having the opponent have assets meant that I got to double down on both parts of my leadership while playing the shapes I liked. which was huge. Hammers was in 3 of my 5 games. Uh, so that happens a lot, and obviously I want to play hammers. So having it be so prevalent meant that I got to play both, which is really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So when you win priority, you want to pick your secures,
Yes.
right? But like, do you ever feel forced to pick your assets if they're like very civilian based, like in the webs or in the, or are you just always
Uh,
slamming secures like most players?
it really, really depends. As an example, you mentioned webs. I'd probably still take secures and hope we drew paranoia because they're going to have paranoia instead of spider infected. Because I agree with you, spider infected would be pretty bad, but paranoia would be pretty good, and you just kind of take that coin flip. The only time I would probably consider taking extracts over secures is where they have 1 or 2 secures I can live with, like an infinity I really like, but also like meteors or mutant madmen I can live with. It's not my preferred, but whatever. If they have researcher, really hate researcher. There's nothing about researcher I enjoy playing. This has nothing to do with just this roster. There's just no joy to be had there. I hate that extract. I hate to call it an extract. It's a secure. That thing is brutal. I would consider taking my extracts if they have that.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they spent a restricted slot on it now. I don't think a single person
Yeah.
did that at LVO though.
Yeah, I didn't encounter any. I can't tell you. I didn't look at the numbers. Maybe somebody did or didn't. But I didn't see any, which is awesome. Um, yeah, that thing was a nightmare in testing.
Yeah.
So I played on it twice with this roster. Uh, Spoiler: Sin Cabal does not have very much play on Researcher.
No, yeah, because the leadership doesn't trigger at all in researcher, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not a contested secure and it's not an
Well,
asset
it is
being
an
held.
objective token,
Oh, it is
so
an
you do
objective
get the
to.
push.
Oh, you do get the push. Okay, that's not no
Yeah.
play.
So this is a really or weird thing that I've kind of whatever caught people on. It does say contesting an objective token. It does not say contesting a secure. So if we are both next to like a dropped asset, like a senator, I could still get the push on you.
Oh, that's kind of
Um,
cute. I didn't know that.
yeah, so I've used that a couple of times. There's some real play there. Yeah, that's so just for everybody who's trying it at home, it does say objective token. Feel free to push people when you're contesting objective tokens. That includes the back part or the forward part of researcher. Those are technically objective tokens by the rules.
Okay. So before we move on from Crisis, was there anything else that was like on the bubble that didn't quite make it, or anything now that LVO is behind you that you're thinking about putting in here?
Yeah, so I have tried Creecore a couple of times. That shape for Legacy is very good for my team.
That's Alien
Um,
Ship is Creekcore?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry. Uh, yeah, I've tried that shape a couple of times because Paranoia scores really fast, but teams that like Paranoia like it more than I do, and that hasn't felt great. Um, Anytime you look at the extract or secure you got with your roster and go, man, the other team's really happy I pulled that. That's not usually a winning position.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I've kind of looked at that alien ship, is because not a lot of teams like it, and not a lot of meta teams, because there's a lot of kaiju out there, like taking piecemeal damage from having more than 3 power, which they always do. So that's one thing I've looked at. And then weirdly enough, I know it doesn't work with the leadership. I am like 5-0 on Senator games. This roster's really good at Senators, and it shouldn't be.
Well, I'm not. So the thing you just said about the like that you get the pushes on like dropped senators or dropped objective tokens. Like there's always 2 senators on the floor.
Yeah. No, that's the MCP special. We played Senators for round 1 and round 2, and then we just kind of forgot those things existed for a while. They're very good at Senators. I have a lot of non-move action movement in the roster, which gets around that Senators tax. So that's very, very useful. Anytime you play Senators and can make 2 movements on an activation, you're kind of ahead of the curve. And I have a lot of that.
That makes sense to me. All right. So, and I know we're a little bit like early here on this, but they spoiled an asset in the new uh, Crisis Pack, like just a few days ago. The ship security breach, which is like
Yes.
the scroll shape, but it's an asset and it's still 20 threat. This thing seems like tailor made for this list.
Yeah, that it's everything you want. It is high threat, so you can get a lot of your piece models like Ulik in there that you really, really want. It's spread out enough. It's 4 wide, which is kind of the sweet spot. I didn't have a lot of success with the 5 wide. I did have success with the 6 wide, but that's because of whatever. But I haven't had a lot of success with the 5 wide. I think 4 wide's perfect for the roster. It is everything you want, and like you said, it's an asset, which is just gravy. Like yeah, I'm definitely gonna plug that thing in the day it comes out. Play it a couple of games, see how that works. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. It's so hard to know like what the game's going to be like. We don't even know if anything's leaving at this point. We're stuck
Yeah,
in the
yeah, we're
past.
stuck in this sort of a limbo.
Yeah. Alrighty. So moving on from there, let's head back. So now that I've actually covered like how we play the list, what the crises are like, what let's talk about some of the weird picks. We talked a little bit about Viper, and I assume that Crossbones is here because of like his husband and wife interaction with Sin.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a lot tankier than you think he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really good Infinity piece. If you want to know when you play this model, it is Infinity Formula. He is great at it. Him and Sin take up one of the funnels. He is really hard to handle. When he has enough power to start his activation, boosting that builder, he kind of has like a budget Apex turn where he just goes nuts. His dice are phenomenal there. He has displacement on the spender. Yeah, he's actually a lot better model than people will give him credit for. He's just very power hungry. And then because he's power hungry, he's probably not worth his threat value outside of this scenario where you can play with activation and priority really easily.
Yeah, and he's really good at like staying on the Infinity once he gets
Yeah.
there. That makes sense to me. He also combos really well with Dark Rain.
Yes. Yes, he does.
Right, because he can make these like these big dice pools that then Dark Rain gives him full rerolls, which makes him more likely to generate the power to do another Haymaker.
Yeah. Yeah. The boosting to 8 dice is very, very efficient. It shouldn't be like you'll look at it and think that that's a high cost for superpower, but noticing that you can do it on the builder makes that like Dark Rain turn, like you said, very cost efficient. Usually refunds it entirely. He's also paid for Dark Rain on more than one occasion, and then still been able to do it. Like if he activates his 6 power, you
Yeah.
can pretty confidently assume you're going to get that power back.
Yeah, right after he flips. One of the weird things about Crossbones is knowing when to actually pay for reduced damage.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like kind of like govern that, I guess?
It depends on what power he's on. Early on, I tend to like let a damage through or two. Obviously, you're gonna pay whenever they spike. If it's the difference between life or death, that's not a tough choice. If it's the difference between taking 1 damage and not taking 1 damage, he's not Beta Ray Bill. Take the damage.
Yeah.
He wants the power pretty badly, and he doesn't care about survivability nearly as much. Yeah, I tend to let that 1 or 2 damage early go through, and then I tend to pay later on into the game a lot more frequently, especially when he flips. Any model on their backside, each HP is a high commodity. I would pay for it at any point in time on that backside. But early on, I like to let a couple damage through, get that, get either the spender or, yeah, mostly the spender. The range tree is pretty big, plus the place helps on B a lot.
Yeah. I think the other thing that people don't fully realize about Crossbones is that he has the same health pool as Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah.
Right, so he is like absurdly tanky for his price. Like, obviously, he comes with some significant drawbacks: short move, incredibly power hungry. The other place that I really liked playing Crossbones is in the Asgard matchup because the wilds off Thor, you can completely stop.
Yeah.
Right, and
I don't know.
he's
It's a very good superpower. There's a he's like a budget, like you said, Beta Ray Bill or Juggernaut. Like he is really annoying to take down. You
mhm.
have to choose to attack him, and in this roster, spoiler alert, if you're choosing to attack Crossbones, who for everyone at home, don't pick up an extract with this character. He's not an extract holder early. If you're attacking Crossbones, you're not attacking my asset holders, and that's
Mhm.
a win as well.
Yeah. I've also just found people just get kind of bamboozled by husband and wife or partners in crime here. Like
Yeah.
people are used to like some people know about the Corvus Proxima, but even that has like become not that popular in Marvel over the last year. And people definitely forget that these two characters have this ability.
Yeah, they also have the worst version of this ability because you have to activate Sin first. It's not
Hmm.
on Crossbone's card, right?
Yeah, you can't go
But
backwards.
uh, more often than not, you're probably going to want to activate Sin first anyways. It didn't matter. Especially like even on some of those Dark Rain turns we were just talking about,
Hmm.
Sin is an absurdly good Dark Rain user. Being able to like go for a Dark Rain, activate Sin, and then the MCP special, you left him on 1 health.
Hmm.
Oh well, it's still my activation. Crossbones, go finish it.
Yeah.
Is very very powerful to get like that third and fourth attack in one activation. Sometimes with Prio. Other times, you can kind of hold their activations till later. Have somebody plan, like, their second to last activation. Have them plan out that, like, okay, well, I'll have Prio so I can daze this model and do this. And then take it away from them and gain Prio back is also a really handy tool. Knowing when to activate them to mess with that priority is really, really important too.
Yeah, because like you can like when one of the things I really like for it is when they're taller than you, and they're like three wide, you're five, and they're like, oh, I can just kill a model and then retain priority. Or sorry, they're four wide and you're whatever, you're one tall or you're one wider, and then they kill a model and now you can just husband and wife and be like, no, I have priority.
Yeah, it's very effective. It's an incredibly good ability
Mm-hmm.
for a bunch of reasons. It's just slapped onto two characters that you probably haven't seen in a long time. Uh, it's like you said with the Corvus and Proxima thing, that used to be popular. But since that has gone away almost entirely, you catch people way more than you think you would
Mm-hmm.
with this ability. Even telling opponents prior to the game, like doing it early, showing them it exists, the implications of what you can do with that are sort of like lost nuance in the game right now. That's been really fun to use and really fun to catch people off guard with.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so moving on from Crossbones, let's just keep rounding out the threes. The other model that I have really been impressed with in this roster is Quicksilver. You want to talk about why Quicksilver's here a little bit because he's one of your very few splashes. You're only splashing two models, and he's one of the
Yeah,
two.
and he's also probably every game piece. I
Yeah.
play him 90% of the time when I put this roster on the table. Quicksilver is hitting the table with it. He has three things that are really impactful for me. One, he's my only steal.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's TTC locked, but it's also a really good steal. It's a turn one steal
Mm-hmm.
in certain cases, which is nuts. He's incredibly like fast and mobile, but his ranges are really good. Long move plus range three on the builder is you hit midline. It's incredible to kind of get like a one piece shot off. He has the movement tech on his builder. It's a little bit more difficult of a trigger, but anytime you hit it, it really impacts the game. His spender does the Zemo thing where you move medium afterwards, which is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has Hell on Wheels, his own version. He can just move medium or move long for 2 power, as long
Yeah.
as he's not holding an asset. So his rotation ability on D's is second to none. He's one of the few characters that can really like get around the board, go cross D to D on the like far ends in one activation, and he does it constantly. He's a very good model.
Yeah.
He also has rerolls. Defensive rerolls are really helpful here. It tends to make it so he doesn't get, that one shot all the time. It sometimes takes 2 to 3 attacks, which is really impactful in a meta where 5 health models feel like 3 health models sometimes.
Yeah, because of all the splash damage running around.
Yeah.
The other thing I really like about the rerolls is you can, because of like what Can't Catch Me, or what's it called? What's his trickster called? Can't Catch Me.
Yeah, Can't Catch Me.
Sometimes you can dial in Can't Catch Me, like somebody's going to double tap Quicksilver, and you can like reroll out of the thing to be able to get the power to have Can't Catch Me, and like now you can't die. Now you're mathematically impossible to die, and then you can just like zip out of there afterwards. The turn one steal is wild.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time. Any game where it happens, you kind of win the game on the spot almost. Like, you're forcing your opponent to play like a weird catch-up game. It's bonkers. We all know from playing so many grunt characters that 4-dice builders, for some reason, are the most efficient builder in the game. They work all the time, and they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. He only needs to generate 1 power and a damage. So he needs to, like, deal 1 damage. He gets a power for it, spends the 2 power, steals your asset.
Yeah, and like
that's his now.
The other thing that's like wild about this is I didn't realize. So I think a pretty like standard like line for this team on turn 1 is to like they have like 2 midline assets. You put Toad across from one. You put Quicksilver across from the other. Right. Hopefully you're going first. You go grab the one with Toad. Right. If they grab the one across from Quicksilver, you walk up and you try to punch them, and you're like coin flip to steal their objective.
Mm-hmm.
Against a def 3 not in cover, it's like 60. Against a def 4, it's like 50. Against a def 3 in cover, it's like 40%. So like they're just like kind of shockingly high for how much point swing it is.
Yeah, it is. It is aggressively good. It's probably one of the main reasons this roster probably works as well as it has is because that is a much better character than people give it credit for, and that tactics card is it's probably the best steal outside of it being a TTC in the game in terms of like how quickly you can do it, how easy it is to execute. It doesn't have the range 1 limit like a lot of steals do. You don't have to pick it up. It is a steal. So if it's,
yeah, it's the most efficient for like it is the cheapest cost. Like it's paying its cost in its TTC opportunity cost, and that it requires dice to be successful. But it is the best version of that. Like no other steal in the game costs 2 power. Like
Also, because of the timing chart, and like this is obviously a given, but you don't ever have to play it either, so it just kind of sits there until it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's not like Hold Still, where you have to, hope that it did work the one time you played it. This thing gets to do its thing. You get to wait. You get to choose when to use it. Oh, I dealt the damage and have 2 power. Yeah, that's mine now. Yeah. It's very, very good. It's a staple to him. I bring it in my 5 every asset game because he's in my 5 or 4, whatever. He's in my squad every asset game. Yeah. This thing sees the table more than Patch-Up does.
Yeah. It's just kind of like wild how it is. Because like when I first saw Quicksilver, so he's like, I'm a 3 that's like hard to kill and steals. And I'm like, why not just play Miles here? And the thing is that just like Quicksilver starts threatening his steal so much faster than Miles does. Miles like optimistically has it late turn 2 or turn 3. And he certainly doesn't steal and then run the way that like Quicksilver might on turn 2.
Yeah. The long move is super valuable there. The range is really valuable, but it's like you said, it's the threat projection of the turn 1. Like, we both know you need to grab that legacy cure, but I'm gonna get a shot at it. That might be mine, and if I go up 3-2 or 3-0 on extracts, this game's probably over. That's a huge swing. This roster really likes to, like you said, it is aggressive on how it wants to get your points. It doesn't sit back and like do all this like weird stuff where it tries to survive. Like it goes and gets the points, and this is exactly why. It's because turn one he goes and tries to get that point every game, like you said.
Yeah. For sure. I think Quicksilver is an absolute all-star here. All right. Moving right along, we'll do the last three. Taskmaster. So Taskmaster is the one that I've played the least of in this roster. What's Taskmaster doing here?
Yeah, so it came down to because I'm playing Quicksilver every game, because I'm playing Toad most games, he's got to count towards that 51%. So it's got to be either affiliated or, in this case, a rogue agent. And between him and the obvious answer is going to be Zemo, right?
Yeah.
Between him and Zemo, I didn't think I needed a third long mover. I thought what I really wanted out of this 3 spot was someone who is one very good on some of the secures that I don't feel as strong about, right? Like I don't love my play on what's that called? It's the F shape with the cover.
Scoundrels.
Scoundrels, yes, thank you. I don't love my play on Scoundrels with this roster. Taskmaster is great at Scoundrels. Also, he is way tankier than you think he is.
Yes, he's very tanky.
That thing lives. That thing lives constantly. Having something that goes up on the side of a D early to flip and probably doesn't die is really impactful. Having it count towards my 51% was really impactful. And if the two things I needed were 51% and tanky, I feel like Taskmaster does that job, and I couldn't find someone else that did it better.
Yeah, and he's also like he's really good at Scoundrels because you're either he has cover or he's in Martial Artists, both of which are huge buffs. And then like Def 3 in cover, pretty good. Def 5 in cover, pretty close to invincible.
Yeah.
Like very hard to put damage on.
Nasty. He's very nasty there. He covers up a couple of weaknesses. He's also good on a couple of other things, like he's good on bees. His ranges are good for that. The clapback is nice. I don't use it all the time, but anytime they're going to take 2 shots into me, obviously getting both off is really, really good.
Yeah. Really can punish rapid fire characters. Like
yeah, incredibly good at that. Especially because of the interaction, right?
With rapid fire, yeah. So like I shoot you. So for the listeners at home, you shoot my Taskmaster, you rapid fire, and now it's both of those go before I am allowed to counterattack you with photographic reflexes or whatever his Counter-Strike is called. Yeah, photographic reflexes. But now when I go to trigger it, it looks and it sees, for both instances of it, it sees that you've attacked me twice already. So I get the big dice pool for both counters. So I get to roll 6 and then I get to roll 6 again. It's like 2 Thor counters.
Yeah, it's a great, and it's on a 3 threat for half the costs. He's a very fun package. He's very unique in his role in this roster. It's weird that you said he's your least played. I'm guessing that's of the 3s.
Yeah, second least in the whole roster, but least of the 3s.
Perfect, because they're
yeah. These definitely. I'm winding up to it. We're definitely gonna wind up to it for sure.
But when he comes out, it's usually when I'm going 5-6 wide, and I have to meet the affiliated status, and he does that perfectly. And then, like I said, it needed to be a 3 threat. It needed to sit on midline. He's the only one I could find that did both.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because like you don't want to flop Zemo out there; he'll just die to most things.
Yeah.
Plus, there's still lots of
Crossbones, it's too slow. Like there's just.
And there's lots of like Agent Venom running around that like because rerolls are so prevalent, so a lot of like the reroll stoppers are running around. Oh, he's also just weirdly good in Namor.
Yeah.
Because of like all martial artist characters are like weirdly good in Namor, but Namor like just like can't double tap this dude. Like the cost is just so high for the threat difference of the two and how precious Namor's hit points are.
Yeah, and Namor's everywhere.
He's everywhere, dude. He's like, was he like the second most played model at LVO or something like that?
Yeah. He's bonkers good. So having something that you feel confident can match up on the same side of a table from that thing for 2 threat less. I mean, eventually Namor probably gets him, but like you said, the opportunity cost is just way too high for the Namor at that point, and you take that every day of the week. He also his values are fine for flipping, as opposed to a lot of models have like a 2 in energy or a 2 in physical, especially in my roster. He's good at flipping, especially uncontested. He's a good model. He also weirdly good into kaiju. His spender for listeners at home does takes their physical defense and adds it to the attack value, and then shuts off all rerolls. So again, into Namor,
Yeah, really
you
good.
get the 4 dice. He can't reroll. You're pretty good at killing him on that flip turn. He's a slept on model actually. I think this thing when you play him, he's much better than you expect every single time. You have to play him on the right stuff. He's great on Ds. He's great on Bs. I don't take him on other setups, but that's what 7, 8, 9, and 10 or 4 in a roster, right?
Yeah, like 100%. And he's just like weirdly good into webs sometimes, as long as the webs come over to him. All right, let's talk about Wrecking Crew, who is like I played them a bunch in Midnight Suns. I liked them a lot there. Tell me about Wrecking Crew as one of my favorite models to come out last year.
Yeah, so they're a large base, which is good for her leadership, because it measures distance to you for the asset drop. So having large bases means you threaten a lot more of the table. They are a pretty efficient package. They're really fun, too. If you haven't played them yet, outside of the strength analysis, they're a really fun model. You get to do a lot. Their turn 1 play pattern for me, because I play them a lot on Bs specifically, like they're great on Infinity. They love that extra power. It turns on everything for them. Same with... I also really like them on G for sword base. So 2 of my 3 secures I really like their shape on for them. Their threat range is crazy. They have the range 4 like Beeb that's really good. They also have a range 3 stun with a hit. The stun on a hit is insanely good. That thing wins me games all the time. A lot of the newer everybody wants to play these models, the new like prevalent ones, are not immune to these conditions, like kaijus of yore of the olden age.
Yeah.
They're not immune to stun. Giving out stun is huge. This thing is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people also like when Wrecking Crew first came out, all they can look at is like walking down the trigger pattern where it's like I give them stun, then I give them stagger, then I start throwing them around with the wrecking bar fling, right? And that's great when that happens, but that is like not what this character does.
Yeah, I almost never like the stagger isn't very common for me either in my play pattern of them. Let alone the throw. I almost never get the throw off. The stun is huge. The ranges are huge. The stagger is really nice when you get it. If you have a chance to double tap like a kaiju, it can give out the stun and then the stagger. Very relevant. The other critique I've seen about them a lot is that they die. They're pretty easy to kill. That matters a lot less when you're 6 wide.
Yes.
A model that flips and removes a model with them. Like, I'm 6 wide. Most teams I'm playing against are 4 wide. I will take that trade. I'm still up a model. I'm usually picking something for them to punch above their weight, too. They're a lot better than people give them credit for. They also have a really good tactics card.
Yes.
That checks when they were attacked versus, or targeted versus the attack, so it gets around a lot of dumb stuff out there. It also, they have a way to attack a 3rd time. You can kind of get that on pretty much every single time you want it. You just kind of save the card for that. And then I've been using it as displacement, just throwing them as far away from my team as possible. And I kind of use it as a closeout mechanic. Like I'll use it turn 3, usually. Turn 3, turn 4. And try to create some space for Taskmaster, Toad, Quicksilver, Sin, all to run away a little bit. It's really great at that.
All right. Yeah, and so the other thing that I really like about them is just like, and kind of the roster in general. The roster destroys terrain all over the place, right? And these guys are like the least of it. I mean, I do like when they can like walk and they can throw their wrecking bar and remove the cover that's making whatever character hard for Quicksilver to steal from.
Yeah, and boost the dice in the process.
Yeah, and then slide into them and be in range to now trigger the drop if that needs to happen.
Yeah, they also, like you said, the flinging them into them is another piece of like I really appreciate hypermobility. This
Yes.
roster has a lot of characters that have hypermobility. This is another piece of I can attack 3 times and move medium on a large base.
Yes. They're
That's a good turn. That's just a good, objectively good turn for a 4 threat to have.
yeah. And even if those attacks are like not that big for a four threat, right? Um man, oh, man, when you get multiple beams, this character feels so insane. Like
Yeah,
when they're like a
it
little
does.
mini dynamo, it can be so
Yeah,
good.
and it's the law of exploding dice. Anytime you make like a large amount of attacks, the dice values matter less and less because at one point one of them's going to double crit, and at some point you're going to punch above that dice value. And anytime you do that, if you do that more often than not, this thing feels like an absolute monster. But
Yes.
when he doesn't do that, he's still a large base that pieces out a couple of damage and drops a stun. His
Yeah.
floor is really high, and his
Yes.
ceiling is somehow higher. That's what I really appreciate out of this model.
Yeah, and it just like again can be just can move so far at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the model I kind of suspect that you don't play very much because I only put him on the table once and I regretted it is Ultron. Why is Ultron 1 here?
So Ultron one here is twofold. One, he is an affiliated piece.
Yes.
That is important because once again, I am playing 2 splashes almost every game. The rest of my roster pretty much needs to be affiliated. Okay. He has a range 4 energy attack, so he answers my Shang-Chi gear check problem.
Okay. All right.
He has a range 4 energy attack. That shouldn't be that relevant of a piece of information. It works. It still is what it does.
And a
5
large
dice
terrain
into
throw.
3, which is
Okay.
good. Yeah, large terrain throw. He's a medium base. He's pretty mobile. The second piece is, we already talked about this. I thought I was going to play into a lot of Midnight Suns, right?
Yeah. So
There's
energy
Midnight
also
Suns.
very useful.
What does Midnight Suns attack with? A lot
Mystic.
of Mystic.
Yeah.
He has the Mystic defense. This thing is weirdly a tech piece that I have only put on the table one time ever in this roster.
Okay.
And the one time I did it, he performed really well, and I went, all right, that's it. I had tried a couple different models, and then this one worked one game, and I just kind of went for it. In the GT, I didn't play a single Midnight Suns player, so it did not. Well, and I didn't play a single Shang-Chi. This thing did not hit the table.
All right. Fair enough.
Those 2 questions, I don't know how relevant those 2 answers are, but it's a range 4 energy attack for Shang and Mystic defense for Midnight Suns.
Yeah, he is kind of like wildly good into Shang. That's why I didn't think about that.
Yeah, he
Uh,
is, and that model is everywhere. So
sure is.
having an affiliated monster that can help out with that is really helpful.
Okay. I like that. Okay, so this is the one character though that I think this roster like could lose, right? Because he's ultimately a meta call, right? You're like,
Yeah.
a lot of Midnight Suns, lots of Shang-Chi. If for whatever reason you don't think that's what's going to go, like what else is like? I have some thoughts here, but I want to see what else you would replace Ultron with if Ultron was to go.
Yeah, so 2 models come to mind pretty quickly. The first one, I'll just throw it out there. Everybody will think this. At some point, Zemo should get a day in this roster. He's just that good.
Yes.
Fine. I don't know how much I need another 3, but he is that good. Secondly, even if I'm going to run Sin's leadership and only ever run Sin's leadership, Red Skull 3 is one of the best four threats in the game. That thing is
Yes.
crazy good. He's crazy mobile. He kind of enables a lot. He has the range for. That model's very, very good. The reason he wasn't in the roster is because I didn't want to be tempted to play his leadership. I wanted to do the Sin thing, so I didn't bring another leadership, didn't give myself the chance to, on game 2, decide to flake out and play something that I thought, whatever. Um, that model would probably come in at some point. He is insanely good. The other one that I'll shout out that I've played a couple times with this roster, he's not the same threat value, and it's a completely different threat value, but this is a model that I have put in and out of this roster several times. Magneto is strangely good in Sin Cabal.
Okay, elaborate on Magneto being good in Sin Cabal.
His Dark Rain turn is really good. That
I
shouldn't
forgot
shock anybody.
he's affiliated.
He's affiliated.
Yeah.
Everybody's Dark Rain turn is good when they're affiliated.
Yep.
Second, like you said, we like to destroy terrain on this team. Magneto really helps with that. We like to destroy terrain. He's going to give us some more to do it with. He's going to throw them. The cover's really good on certain map situations that I'm not particularly fond of with this roster. He kind of answers a couple of questions that I don't have answers for right now. And then also, who doesn't want Magneto on the table? I mean, that thing is awesome. I think the cover and his Dark Rain turn are both super viable. I think the size 2 terrain specifically is really nice to keep generating for my team. In a game, I generated both of them, turn 2, turn 3, generated both of them in a line, lined it up, got the Wrecking Crew beam, destroyed both, added a bunch of dice to my pool, and just nuked a team on an E. He's a weirdly efficient model for this roster. Also, he has the right base size. He does a lot with that. He gets the pushes off. He contests objective tokens. Pushing people in towards your team to get the extract drop is also super viable, even if you can't get the range 2 for rerolls. I've played him a couple times. He's worked every time. I'm going to try him again here coming up. But yeah, that's the other models that I've been looking at. But RS3 is probably the number one. Like, he should just be there.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be Ultron. It should just be him. But
yeah, because he can kind of cover some of the same things except for the defensive stuff against Midnight Suns. But offensively, he's still really good. All right, so I actually think a lot of stuff could go here, but my big swings are, I think Bob is kind of interesting here. I think a lot of times where you would play the 4 threat, you could just play 2/2s and play Bob and Toad. Like, I don't think you would ever put Bob on the table without Toad. But having a 2 threat that's essentially invincible and can always trigger half of Sin's leadership, I think is kind of interesting.
yeah, and his Dark Rain turn is insanely good.
Yeah, you can Dark Rain Rocket and be like, all right, let's see if a 2 threat prints huge value. I think Loki's kind of interesting here.
Loki 1?
Yes, Loki 1.
Yeah, I tried him as a 5 threat for a while too and had a lot of success here as well. That is a model I have actually tested and it works.
Yeah, and also kind of works in some of the similar spots because, like, while he will not go toe-to-toe with Shang, he does make Shang and Namor's life kind of miserable. Having to pay 1 more for charge and 1 more for, 10,000 shapes or whatever the pick your broken effect.
1-inch punch, or whatever that's called, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it's...
1-inch punch is one of the effects on whatever that ability is named.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so making that cost 2 instead. So, like, he goes from his average turn requiring 4 power to, like, his average turn requiring 7 is a tall ask.
Yeah, and he also has the added benefit of he's just another model of, well, I'm going to put him up there. If you can kill him, but every turn after you've dazed him is going to be a nightmare for you. The backside, like turning off crits, is really strong. That model's that model is one of those. The few times you've played him, like, he doesn't feel as good as he is. The first time you play against him, You are like mad. You're swearing up and down. Why is this fourth threat so impactful? Like he plays Loki so well. Like
Hmm.
he's such a nuisance the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I said I've been playing him as the 5. Mind Stone. You kind of do the invader thing where you take their extract holder and you push it into your team and then
Mm.
hope that they drop it. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
it's
So
very
mind and not space. Interesting. Yeah, just to like pull people in, and you can even push people away from Loki, who's like holding your extract, and then
yeah.
in near someone that can then trigger the drop or whatever.
Yeah, space would usually be better, but given my team's hypermobility already,
Yeah.
I didn't really need the extra place. Whereas having mind is like, as we've seen recently with Thanos taking it so much, enables a lot of gross play patterns that your opponent has to really be careful not to misposition against.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like if you're committing to 5 threat Loki and you're like, I need mobility, and it's like, okay, well, why isn't this Ulik? Or why isn't
Yeah,
this like Viper and Toad?
yeah. So
Right.
if mobility was the problem, I already have
You're
answers
already
in the
so
roster.
flush. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, we've got just 2 guys left. We've got Ulik, who I think is largely, while he's fallen off a lot, mostly because him and Abomination have really similar kits. The difference being that Ulik is much faster, and Abomination starts playing the game on turn 1, whereas Ulik doesn't do anything turn 1. So most people want to start playing the game on turn 1. Most people play Abomination. They're kind of I believe they completely share affiliations, or maybe is Abomination Cabal?
Abomination's Hydra.
He's Hydra. That's right. Okay, so Ulik's largely fallen out of favor, mostly because he was usually seen in Criminal Syndicate. But tell me about his inclusion here.
Yeah, he is. For one, he's insane on beta flips. His entire package is just so good at beta flips. The Pounder's attack has a push on it, which is super relevant. You can just kind of take it. It's a decent enough dice pool. Getting a wild's not crazy. I'd have to plug it into a dice calculator, but I would assume it's a pretty good odds.
6 dice, it's like it's just under 60.
Yeah, so the push is crazy relevant there. He's insanely mobile. The biggest one for him is going to be that crushing leap is not once per turn.
Mm-hmm.
So the insane mobility of I would like to move small and then place 2 on a medium base, and then, I'm going to do that a second time while making 2 attacks, makes his pay to flip turns really good. The other thing he brings to the table that I don't think people talk about enough is Shattermount and Shatterbones is an insane spender into like high threat models.
Yes.
That is just, it's an insane. The floor of this spender is you are staggered. The very worst this thing can do is stagger you. Like, I completely flub the roll. I roll my 9 physical dice. They're all skulls. I get nothing. You're staggered. Enjoy that. It is a very good spender. Combining that with his stat line 434, I want to say it might be 433.
No, it's 434.
Yeah, 434. He has pretty good defenses. He has the DR. He's 7 health on the front side. He's actually a very good he's incredibly tanky. He does exactly what this roster wants to do. He dives their back D or back B, and he pushes them off of it. And he's a menace the entire game to every 3 threat that they have.
Yeah. I really liked Shattermount and Shatterbones into Apocalypse, specifically. Like, just activating Apocalypse can be an absolute enormous swing, especially if Apocalypse is trying to hold his activation until there's more conditions out.
Yeah, activating Apocalypse is huge. Activating Thor has been really huge. I've done that a couple times. Anytime I also, in the GT as an example, I won a game off of, I activated Abomination, and then did the spender a second time and activated RS2, and it's just like, all right, well, the game's over. It's turn 4, you're down your 2 high threat models. I win.
Just 10 points activated right there.
Yeah, like he had a crazy good turn. Um, he is Yeah, especially at the things I'm bringing, like sword base, he is phenomenal at. Anytime, like I said, you can get an uncontested beta flip, is crazy. But also spider portals, he doesn't care about the place. He can get back. He's gonna get back for free. He does not care about this place. He also has 2 power, which is super relevant. He's one of my. I think he's my only model. Now I've said that. No, Wrecking Crew. That's what it was.
Yeah.
He's one of my 2 models that has 2 power. Can play both an extract and a pay to flip on turn one, which is super relevant when you're bringing pay to flips.
Yes. 100%. Speaking as a shield player, like shield has massive problems on turn one trying to play pay to flips. Because we just don't have the 2 power character and like don't really want to splash any of them.
Yeah, and you also have you get put in the bubble of you want to grab all the extracts, but you don't want to be up there on the pay to flips necessarily to get attacked. This roster poses a lot of problems even for pay to flip people. It is done well into like X-Men as an example, because it has a lot more like aggression than X-Men would expect, and it kind of can put teams that are like supposed to be good at some of this stuff behind the 8 ball. The Quicksilver steal, the push from Pounders giving me an uncontested beta flip. Like there's some really good stuff here, and Ulik enables a lot of it. He's a very highly played model, especially in this roster.
Yeah.
I think if you are playing an affiliation he is in, and you're running into you would like to play wider secures, you should give him a try. He's great there. Don't take him on ease, but he's great everywhere else.
Yeah. Absolutely. He's a mobility specialist.
Yeah.
All right. And then rounding the roster out, we got Modok 1, who is a character that used to literally be the best character in the game. Got hit pretty hard with the Nerf hammer. Fair enough. But he's back in your roster.
That's right.
What's up with that?
Yeah, he's awesome. I love OG Modok. This thing is people just forgot about him. I don't know. Bow is a phenomenal superpower. The terrain throw is phenomenal. His ranges are 4. He kind of does a lot of things, especially on Bs and Gs. He's great on sword. He's great on infinity. He loves the power. The blanking wilds is insanely good.
Especially in the modern
especially
meta.
in like a Thor world. Yeah, in a Thor 2 world, getting rid of all the wilds that guy rolled is really impressive. Innate too, so it's just like it's always happening. There's nothing you can do about it. He's got a good health pool. He's got 10 health on the front side. Spoiler when we get to TTCs, patchups in the roster, because you never want this thing to go to his backside.
Correct.
But he's a very good model. His attack also is range 4. I already said that, but it's Mystic. Like he's very good attacking. It also has sap on it, which is strangely good. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the sap timing, since it's before damage is dealt. In the GT, I played into a Guardians player on Infinity Formula. This thing walked up, attacked Bill, sapped him for the power after he grabbed an extract, and then just one-shot him because he couldn't pay for it. I know that's a crazy spike, but it was still just like, this thing's sap is super relevant.
Absolutely.
He does so much.
Yeah, especially like into Asgard, you can rob them of their Odin's power on your spike. So you're like, Spike, I roll 3 wilds. Right? You had enough for Odin's, now you don't.
Yeah. It's crazy because of the timing chart on it, because it's before damage is dealt.
Yeah.
It's really good. Also, you'll be hard-pressed to find a lot of 5 threats who spend power better than Modok does.
Yes.
He has a great suite of abilities. He also, and this doesn't matter for a meta discussion, but for everybody who wants to play this thing, read his superpowers when you play them. You will laugh every time. This thing is the best written card in MCP. His terrain says imbecile. Like, it's just great. You read these things and it is phenomenal. But the long throw is really good, and the bow is really good, and then he has rerolls. that are really, really strong. Now, the rerolls are once per turn. Don't get caught, doing the double thing. But saving them for something that really matters is really strong. He is a much better model. I don't know why he has been forgotten about. Probably because new shiny toys.
Yeah,
But he's been great in every game.
yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it's also that like there's been a lot more characters that can move size fours
Yeah,
that have come to the game, and he is a character that wants to plan his feed and attack twice to get his value.
he's a turret for sure. He's definitely kind of nope, not even kind of. He's definitely a turret. Every time this thing takes a move action, he's sad.
So
But
I love the Modok pick here. Why is this not Ultron 2? Or why Modok over Ultron 2? It's not a trick question.
yeah. So first one, Ultron's in the list. I don't like taking one of each.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'd be lying if I said that that was made prior. Modok's been on the list since day one. Uh, this model, yeah, it's something to do with this model. I have a ton of success with him. His mystic attack is super, super relevant as opposed to the energy attack from Ultron. A lot of energy's going around. A lot of tech for energy attacks going around. I like having one big mystic attacker. The second piece will be I like the large base as opposed to the medium base. I know you get the grunts, but I really like the large base there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I probably should try some Ultron too there. I kind of dropped him pretty quickly after the Age of Ultron change. I know a lot of other people did as well. He's still a good model. He still does a lot of things. I think Modok brought a little bit more of what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
The Doomsday Chair is another example of just getting 4 attacks on a turn is something I think is really undervalued. I know the grunts get to do it, but 4 7 dice attacks
Yeah.
is really undervalued. Yeah, that's probably why.
So yeah, I think the decision between the two is a little bit like complicated, not as clear cut. I think a lot of it has to do with like you're only playing Modok, or at least my understanding is that you're only playing Modok on the scenarios that are like kind of bad for you, like when you're on Gamma or Demons or Intrusions or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Those and Infinity. He's also great on Infinity.
yeah, he's also good on Infinity. And not that Ultron 2 isn't good at those, but a lot of the people playing those have super relevant wild triggers, specifically Thor 2. Like Thor 2 is actually kind of bad at killing Modok.
That's been my experience as well.
Especially if you're
Yeah.
holding Brace, which obviously everybody still has Brace.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you're holding brace for him. You're also he's good at not just living himself, but keeping the rest of your team alive.
yeah,
because he's attacking Modok and not pinging around to your back point setters.
yeah, exactly. And like, whereas Ultron 2 should just die to a Thor activation. Especially if he's playing brothers. So I think the Modok thing is really interesting here, and I like it. You have to be careful because like Bill is still running around, and Bill can throw Modok farther than Modok can walk back,
Yeah.
and you got to be careful about Hulk and all that stuff. But you have lots of tools, and I think his kit is still like it has really good output. And if your list is taxing them enough with the Sin leadership, losing an action on Modok with a walk because he was displaced or whatever can be an acceptable cost to pay.
Yeah, especially given the like if I'm taxing them in action and then they're taxing me in action, we're at the same actions. And I really like Modok's activation. His actions are always good. Bow also. This is Ultron also has that, but as just a bow is an incredible ability. Bringing a character with a large base that has bow means that there is a lot of range that this thing just decides that you're walking here into this bubble or whatever. It's like I said with the Mind Stone. Having the ability to walk somebody into range so I can steal their asset off of them with the leadership is crazy strong.
Yeah, and I think like combining your list with Bow, and we didn't really super discuss this with Sword Base, but when Sin leadership triggers, and then you can combine that with like if you have priority or they have to go on the other side of the board, and like Modok pushes somebody off point with the Sin leadership, and then gets to double tap them, they live, and then he walks them away again. They are so far from where they started, and like you can
Yeah,
do kind of the
the
same
tough
thing with
time
Sword
getting
Base.
back to hit him. Yeah, sword base is also because of the timing chart, like we said earlier. You get to push them off of it, and then you get to do all your leadership stuff. And then if you're already winning, you get to walk them a second time. So pushing them small twice is insane value, especially if they have a turret or something that really doesn't want to spend activations to get back. Um, yeah, it's a very good combo. It's a very cool combo. The amount of range you will find that you are like pushing them away is awesome. But then the amount of range you'll find in this roster, I have a lot of like range 4 attacks or range 3 attacks that can still attack those targets and keep relevancy.
All right, cool. Let's do tactics cards, then we'll talk about matchups, and then we'll wrap this thing up. All right.
All right.
All right. So team tactics cards. Dark Rain. I think this is pretty obvious why Dark Rain is here.
Yep. If you're
It's
playing Cabal and don't take that, I
like, what are you
don't know
doing?
why you're playing Cabal.
We talked a little bit about Stronger Together with Wrecking Crew and how that's really good. This is a card that lets Wrecking Crew throw someone for 3 power. It's size unrestricted. They have to have attacked them, and based on the number of times they've attacked them, they get to throw them longer and longer. And it also throws from range 4, so you can just like shoot them with the beam at range 4 and then throw them away.
Yeah, it's really disgusting, especially the one you just described. Sometimes you don't always get the long throw. You'll settle for the medium throw if you made 2 max range 4 mystic attacks into this target, and then you just toss them medium afterwards. Can be really annoying to deal with, especially for models that I've been running into. Like, if you throw Thor medium and he wasn't base to base with somebody to hit, you're now kind of denying his pounce to like as a damage source, which is really good. Um, I've also used it in the GT. I used it against CGR. Forcing that thing to have to spend his power to get back meant he wasn't crazy the next turn, which was really impactful. I've used it into Apocalypse a couple of times. Like anything that is just like this big menacing, like I would like to double tap you, just getting to throw them medium even is worth the tactics card slot. Then you double down on the it could be a much longer throw if you do get the triple attack, because they have the get 'em boys, or it's called, where he gets the third attack. Getting the third attack on them and then throwing them long can either bowling ball into a unsuspecting, running away 3 threat or something, but also can just create so much distance that this thing spends its entire activation getting back, especially if they're like a short move, or if they did it to like my Modok as an example, he would have an awful time getting back to that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We've discussed Can I Borrow That? The super efficient Quicksilver Steel. Brace for Impact is like staple to every list ever at the point, because throws have kind of gotten out of control in the game. Like everybody's packing big throws. And it's gonna be prevent 2 to 4 damage. Like that's what this card is gonna do in every game. And then you're playing Patch Up. I talked a little bit about it. It's mostly for Modok. Is that the only time you really play Patch Up?
I've brought it in other games. Like, it's a good card regardless, right? That's why it's restricted. The reason why it won out over other restricted cards is because of Modok. I do bring it sometimes if, like, we're going to be playing, on E, it's just relevant. Taking 3 damage off of 3 to 5 damage off of somebody is a relevant tactics card. It's also really good on Ulik. He tends to be a tougher model to take some health off of. Giving him health back is really good. I would mostly say I play it for Modok, but I've brought it anytime I don't like one of the other character cards, or I'm not bringing enough characters with character cards. It makes the 5. It's generically useful.
Yeah. I think I would agree with there. I'm a known patch-up hater. My argument generally boils down to patch-up punishes a game state. It doesn't help you like create a winning game state. It's just like you luck into the situation where patch-up is a blowout, and then you play patch-up.
Yeah, especially in this roster, right?
Yeah.
Like that argument boils down to like if you were Immortal Hulk, it doesn't because you're getting an extra 15 health now or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's dumb. But in this roster, the main argument I would make for that is that Modok tends to be pretty hard to get 10 health off of.
Yes.
Giving him 5 more health to stay on his much better front side is very relevant. And then another model I will shout out for this purpose is I've patched up Taskmaster before a couple times. That model gets really annoying when like you've been trying to whittle him down and he's whittling you down, and then all of a sudden he has health and you don't. That card it's very good. I understand what you're saying of like it doesn't progress my game plan any further, but in reality my game plan is to score and live.
Yeah.
So living kind of does in that sense. I don't know.
Yeah. You also have a kind of a unique thing going on in this roster. So one of the difficulties of playing patch up is like, like you want to play it right after a model gets like spiked. And then, but that's the model that has the power that could play patch up, not the model that could have patch up played on it. But in your roster, Sin and Wrecking Crew randomly Yahtzee into like a bajillion power.
Yeah. Sin the most often. Sin for you don't have a lot of ways that you're going to be spending the power either. So Sin has power to spend on this all the time.
Yeah.
Ulik is another example. Always has power to spend on this. I don't always want to spend the power on Ulik, but hey, he always has the power. There's a lot of models on my roster that also do the like I can get in range to patch up pretty trivially. I've had an activation with Quicksilver where he spent 2 power to move along, got into patch up range, and then just went to the complete opposite side of the board. I was like, actually, I'm fine with this. I'm gonna flip this point, and I got the patch up off. Like I have enough mobility and enough batteries, as we like to call them in the community, that I can kind of get around the taxing piece of playing the card.
And the battery thing makes a lot of sense to me too, because you have a lot of characters here that are like I don't have that much power, but also like my power is not important. Like Viper probably doesn't have a lot of power on her, but she will happily donate her entire stack to Modok's health pool.
Yeah. And anytime she gets the chance.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think patch up makes sense here. But if like you were a known patch up hater like me, I don't think fallback would be absurd either.
That was the other card I would go to.
Yeah, because
for what it's worth.
You're playing a little too wide for sacrifice to be good.
Yeah, also you're playing a little too weak for sacrifice to be good. I don't have a lot of models that can take somebody's attack and not feel really scared by that. So sacrifice was a no-go. I also considered Indom for a little bit. Modok kind of likes Indom.
Yeah, that's true.
Really didn't like spending the power on Indom. And found that it didn't often save him enough, whereas a patch-up has saved him almost every time, at least for one more turn or one more activation.
Yeah. Especially because, you want... Like, if Modok's being thrown, it's 1 damage that he's preventing. Whereas, Indom can sometimes be second brace. And that's when it's, at its best. It's, keeping me on the point, and I'm not taking damage, and my buddy's not taking damage. But, yeah, I think if you were to play those other ones, I don't think that'd be crazy. All right, let's get into... Oh, no, wait, we got 2 more, kind of normal cards. You've got Recal. Recal's good. If it wasn't significantly... Yeah.
Yeah. It's generic. It's good.
Yeah.
It hits the roster when it has to.
Absolutely. And especially a lot of the modern super strong things are kind of fishing for insane spikes. Being able to reset their first big spike that can give them big advantage can be really strong. Your roster doesn't have trouble paying for it really.
Yep, like we said, I have batteries. I have batteries who don't mind the tax.
And then you've got Warpath. Warpath is the last generic card that hits a lot of people's roster. It's a generically good effect. Before the huge culling of tactics cards that happened halfway through the year, it wasn't very popular. Now it's kind of everywhere. This is the one card I have not put on the table at all in this roster. When does this actually hit the table for you?
It's mostly a Crossbones card.
Okay, so you can double
really
warpath.
like
You can double aggressive.
Yeah, double aggressive's really good for him. Yeah, generically speaking, this card doesn't hit the table very often for me either.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a 10th card
Okay.
for a while there. But it's useful for Crossbones. It's also generically useful for Modok. Sometimes he gets hit, gets pushed. You pay the one, you walk back. You still have your turn in the right spot.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
It has some good uses. I've only played it one time, and in that one game, it was fine. It doesn't hit the table very often. If somebody finds a better 10th tactics card for this exact roster, I would say go for it.
Oh boy, buddy, I got a pitch for you later.
All right, I'm in.
All right.
I'm excited for that.
Okay, well let's get through the rest of these first. All right, now we get your spicy picks. We've got Diggin, which is the Brock Rumlow card. So any Crossbones can play this. This came in Core Set 2. It had a long and winding errata cycle, but essentially it means that you play it in the power phase, enemies can't move Brock.
Yep. It's good. He's a difficult model to deal with when he's sitting in the exact range he wants to be at.
Mm-hmm.
Often he will dive like I've mentioned I played into like Guardians a couple times. He dove against Star-Lord and just sat on the back B with him. And this card was useful because now you can't push him. Like other things can't displace him. You can't have CGR come pull him off or whatever. This card is kind of super matchup dependent.
Yes,
it's also super crisis dependent. If you think they're going to push you a lot and try to push you a lot, this card sometimes makes it in. It's useful. I have played it more than I've played Warpath.
Yeah, I like it into Thanos specifically. So like,
yes.
So
okay, so you've seen the tech.
Yeah, absolutely. So like,
this is so good.
What this card does. So also, I mean, we also failed to mention that it gives you defensive rerolls for the round, which can be helpful.
Yes.
But like the important part of Dig In is that Dig In doesn't cost power, and so you can play it on turn 1. In your first activation can be a Crossbones double walk pick up center objective and not be able to be kidnapped by Thanos. All right, and like on certain scenarios, he can be just like essentially kept like pretty darn safe. Like he's going to take a couple attacks and he's like Def 4 reroll 4. I don't love that plan, but also Thanos is like absolutely busted, and there aren't a lot of good ways to plan around his thing other than just going way down on points turn 1, which this roster can't afford to do.
I also don't have a traditional, like I don't have a Thanos safe grab.
Mm-hmm.
I have safe-ish grabs.
Yes.
But I have no grab in my roster that ignores Thanos.
Exactly, yeah.
This is one tech I've used to ignore Thanos. It's fine. If anything, it's just means Thanos doesn't activate right away and lets you grab the other midline extract. But then, fine, I got 2 of them. I don't know. It's good. Like you said, the fact that it doesn't cost power means that my most power-hungry model in my roster didn't spend power on this TTC.
Mm-hmm.
And the defensive rerolls are a nice added benefit, especially on what I'm talking about, where you're diving their back point with this model. For him to just kind of sit there, tank through it, he's got rerolls now. He's still got the pay 1 for DR. It makes him kind of unkillable for 1 round. And that's kind of where it's used, is I don't want to be displaced, and I'd really like to activate.
Makes sense to me. All right. We got Illicit Tech. I haven't played this card. So this card seems generically good to me. Okay, so what or what Illicit Tech does is it gives you the Exposin Plasma Rifle attack. This is an attack card. It does cost an action. It's a range 5, 6 dice card. It costs 1 to play, but it gives you power equal to damage dealt and puts Incinerate on the target and everyone within 2 of it. So the card seems generically good, and Sin and Crossbones can play this card. But like, when does this actually like come into the roster?
So this is, and you're gonna love this. It comes in anytime I play against Shield for sure. Just generically, I would like to incinerate your entire bubble is really good.
Yes, especially
it's
if
also
they're
good into like Inhumans, any of those bubble teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good into. It also, if you're playing Crossbones, there's a really good chance I'm going to take this card.
Okay.
Giving him a way to generate power turn 1 is really helpful. It's a good effect. 6 dice energy is a good attack for my 3 threat to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you said, I've got bad. Like Sin doesn't care about paying that 1 power.
No.
So if Sin pays 1 power and then hits you for a 6 dice energy with Incinerate, she is more than happy about that. That does not bother her. It is generically useful. It always happens. I always like if I take this card, it's getting played in the first 2 rounds probably.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to just kind of help you with the aggression that we've been talking about. The early like I would like to get ahead, and one of the ways you can get ahead in aggression is incinerating an entire group of models.
Yes.
Just deciding that their defensive tech is way worse. Also, great into Shang-Chi.
Oh yeah, that makes sense too. The more anti Shang-Chi tech reduces defense by 1.
Keep that model.
Get him while he's outside. That makes sense to me. All right. Lastly, we have got the spiciest take of all, which is Mind Games.
Oh, it's not that spicy. This card's good.
I actually do think this card's good. I've only played it in the meme lists, but while doing that, I've realized the character, like, that I think the card is good. I've never played it with Modok 1. But
Okay.
this card, so listeners, this card is a wall of text that essentially says Modok plays 3. He creates like a shell game, and there's 5 tokens. 2 are damage, 2 are take power, 1 is a victory point. And they have to pick the 2 piles. Are you doing the internet thing where you're just like, I only use this to kill 1 health models?
So I definitely do that.
Okay.
That's a good version of this card. Don't get me wrong. 1 health models, you just do it, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I use this card to win a lot.
Oh yeah, just to be like, I'm on 1 point, let's coin flip it. Or I need 1 point to win.
There's games where I will do it as my I'm on 14, they're on 11, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
That's a common score line for me, probably. It's 11-12. The main point is they need to not be on 15.
Yes.
If
Oh,
I'm
right,
on
because
14
it's
and
2
they're
victory points, not 1 victory point.
Yes, if I'm on 14 and they're not on 15, I have 100% just, all right, let's see if I win the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in matchups where, like, my team gets decimated a lot of games, where I'm scoring VPs left and right, but we're looking at the start of round 4 and I've got 2 bottles left.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon for this roster. You're playing really wide, so it's just a bucket of health points and a VP for you. This thing has won me a ton of games. It also might be the single most fun TTC in all of MCP. Shuffling the little stupid tokens under the table, picking out the 2 piles, and then pushing one of them towards them, being like, which one you want? It's really fun. It does something that just like, it is peak MCP for me. That this card is, it's also peak Modok. That's the most Modok thing I can think of, is let's coin flip this game on a chance choice. Mm-hmm. Also, the sap's relevant. He likes power.
Yes.
If you're going to do this on his activation, sometimes you don't have to, but a lot of times you are just going to do it on his activation.
Mm-hmm.
Getting 2 extra power to then get a bow off or something is super helpful as well.
Yeah, refunding the money can be
very good. Just be careful that you're not playing it in a situation where 1 VP screws you.
Yeah.
As long as one VP doesn't drastically change how you play out the rest of this round, this card is good. If you get in that situation, I would argue that you're already struggling with this roster to begin with, or something. Is you're playing into something that's also hyper-indexed into the scoring front, and then in that case, I probably wouldn't have brought this card in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like best when you're worried about running out of gas or like losing all your models before you hit the finish line.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. That's how I've played it a lot. The one extra damage thing that you see on the internet, it's also good. I don't want to talk bad about that strategy. The card's good for that.
Mm-hmm.
But more often than not, I play this thing because I hit 14 VP and don't know how I'm going to get 2 more.
All right, that makes sense to me. And also, like Modok, you're kind of playing in all of those matchups anyway, right? Like,
yeah, in bad matchups where they're supposed to be attrition and I'm supposed to be the scoring team, Modok's hitting the table more often than not.
mm-hmm.
And in those matchups, 1 VP does not help your opponent.
Yeah, but 2 can be the world to you.
Yes.
All right, that makes sense to me. All right, so my spicy tech to replace Warpath. Are you ready for this? And you actually admitted you wanted this effect earlier in the episode.
Okay.
Do you know the card Psychic Fortress?
Yes, the cover for Modok.
The cover for Modok. So you suggested playing it with Magneto.
Yeah.
So anywhere Magneto would be good, Modok would probably be good.
No, that's a great shout out. I completely forgot about that card actually until you said it. Yeah, that's a great shout out. The cover is really fun.
Right. Yeah, and so it's just pay 3 power, range 4 cover. It's only the 1 turn. It doesn't recur like Magneto's, but Magneto's would recur for you.
Recurring Cabal, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so all right, cool.
That's a good shout out. Yeah, I will definitely have to try that. That seems really fun. More Modok cards. Good.
Absolutely.
I need more reasons to put Modok on the table. I love this thing.
All right. Let's wrap this up talking about matchups. Like, so what? And matchups. I'm talking like faction wise because we've already discussed Crisis to death. But like, which factions are you worried about with the roster? What things do you think this kind of preys on? Where does it kind of fit into the meta?
So, talking about matchups, the worst matchup possible is, obviously, Hellfire Club is abysmal. I hate it. I hate this thing. Every model that I have in my roster is better under Emma's leadership, and I think that is generically true for 90% of the roster in this game. I hate that matchup. They do everything I don't want them to do. They're better at my game plan. That roster's abysmal. They also like the D shape. Any team that likes the shape of D is a bad affiliation. Why are they doing this to me? That's really my thing. The other piece that I've had trouble with is, before I started teching for it a little bit, is Shang-Chi, in especially Defenders, absolutely wrecked me. I had no play into that. And to be clear, I'm talking about Portal Defenders.
Yeah.
I don't care about Daredevil Defenders at all. But Portal Defenders was really hard for me to play into. They just bring such efficient models, and they have the mobility to keep playing with me. Those are 2 of the worst matchups. What was the second piece to your question? I'm sorry.
It was just like, what do these prey on? Like, you get to pick the 5 lists you play into. Like, what do you want to play against?
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I love playing into attrition with this roster. I am so annoying for attrition, especially when I win Prio. They hate it. Wakanda, I have a really good win rate into Wakanda with this roster. Both versions, too. The M'Baku attrition version, I've done well into. And then even the BP1, like, sword-based, let's push everybody roster, I push them right back. And Wakanda players usually are used to having that advantage. Taking that away from them is good. I've also done well into every mutant affiliation. APOC, X-Men, those kind of things. They kind of do the same thing I do, where they want to get up on points and then they start to run out of gas. Because I have Ulik, I'm just generically great into Apocalypse.
Yes.
They usually don't melt him fast enough for me to stagger or even activate him. That matchup's been really good. Those are probably some of the better ones. Midnight Suns I've teched a lot for.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to play this matchup with my actual roster, though. I don't know how this affiliation is everywhere. And for some reason, they see BarBarJonks across from them, and they decide, I don't want anything to do with Blade.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. One of my only losses was into Apocalypse, but also I think I played Modok and I shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And also, Apocalypse matchups are weird. I swear that thing just decides on a random war builder who's winning the game half the time.
Yes,
like,
War is very good into Modok. Was my problem.
Yes, War is phenomenal. Yeah. Also, picking, weirdly enough, Modok is the worst thing into APOC because picking which attack you're doing into me really sucks.
It does, yes.
Also, you get to do the war effect before I do.
Mm-hmm.
Before I blank you.
Yes,
so
correct.
You get the value from all of your wilds.
Yeah.
Sure, you lose them, but you get the value.
And you also can't run out because let's say I roll 12 wilds or whatever in a Modok. I can pick up all 12. I can pick up those wilds and turn them to hits.
Yeah.
So I just get all my hits or whatever. So War just undoes the Modok thing.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
Yeah, so I'm not going to make that mistake again. Ulik almost bailed me out, but he failed to get there.
Ulik's very good in that matchup. Yeah. He's phenomenal even in that matchup. Also, weirdly, because I am so mobile and fast and all that, they have a tough time getting me in don't put the bubbles, so Pestilence is less relevant into me. I kind of rotate around, so the stupid beast thing doesn't matter as much to me where he throws me away and then flips.
Mm-hmm.
I get right back on the point and flip it as well. So I really like that matchup specifically, because that's another matchup I've played a lot of. Apocalypse has been everywhere. I've done well. So.
Yeah, and Beast specifically really hates the trigger, because what Beast wants to do is he wants to throw you off the point, flip the point he's on, and then go walk to 2 more points. But if his first action has to be to walk back onto the point he got pushed off of by the Sin leadership, his effectiveness falls off a cliff.
Yeah, so that's another point where a lot of the stuff I like in this roster is a 50-50 coin flip. Mm-hmm. It's just if you take enough of them, you're going to hit a third of them at least, and you only need about a third success rate on the amount of 50-50s I'm taking to really feel its value.
Yeah. For sure. And one of the things about MCP compared to other miniature games like Warhammer or War Machine or whatever is because it's an alternating activation game and because its dice are so wild that the game really rewards being adaptable and not having a plan and sticking to the plan and executing your plan. It's okay, the plan's gone bad. How do I adjust and still take a line that wins? And Sin constantly throws those changes of the status quo into the game with her leadership.
Yeah, a ton of wrenches.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think if you're the kind of player that can adapt well, I think this roster should be a thing you should try out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You said you've been playing it. It's surprisingly better than it reads.
Yeah, it reads awful, dude. It reads so bad.
Yeah, her leadership is probably one of the most, it is significantly better than it reads. It does the thing more often than you think it will. And the thing is so impactful. The push is impactful. The asset drop is awesome. The only feels bad is you have to do one before the other, so a couple of times you'll push somebody out and then you won't get the asset drop. But my argument would be you pushed them off the point. You can't be that mad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right, man. So I think with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Vince Was Wrong about Sin. Who knew? If anybody wants to talk to you or ask you about this roster, can they reach you on Discord or anything like that?
Yeah, and some people have already done that. This roster, I would love to share all the notes with everybody about this roster. Anybody who wants to play it should, feel not only feel free, I encourage it. And if you adapt on it and find something really cool, please message me as well. I would love to keep getting iterations of this roster. This thing has been really fun. I'm really glad it did well. Yeah, you can reach me. I'm BarBarJonks on Discord. I'm in all of the major Discords for this game, probably. So feel free to message out.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks so much for joining us. And guys, don't forget that fun is a finite resource. So before we get too much into this, why is your nickname BarBarJonks? Where does that come from?
It's an old Discord that we were all in, that we were all really... there was a joke about Jar Jar Binks and how there was no way to make him cool. And I took a picture of Dave Bautista and spliced Jar Jar Binks' head on it, and then just changed my name to this, and it just stuck.
There you go.